Hey folks, so today I wanted to do something a little bit different. I have some problems with my recording as well, so I'm gonna try this again, and I'm gonna show the essence of deck building here and how to build a good deck even if you don't have a good collection. So I'm a free-to-play player. I don't have a huge collection. I have been playing for less than a month. I just paid $5 for the initial package that you get a bunch of gems and some boosters. So that's all the money I ever spent on Arena, $5. And then I basically farmed gold and daily quests, and I spent most of my gold on boosters to try and go and grow my collection. So deck building to me is the favorite part about playing Magic. And I'm not going to get into the technical aspects of it. I think there are plenty of good videos in the internet for that. Things like what should be your mana curve, what is the land balance that you're looking for. Most of what I'm doing here, I'm doing out of the top of my head due to my experience as a Magic player. And of course, I'm gonna give some room for me to recognize mistakes and improve on them. The first thing you wanna try and do when you're deck building is think about what your deck's going to do and why are you building your deck for. I generally think that trying to build deck around archetypes is a little bit boring. For instance, you want to be a combo player or a control player or an aggro player, and you say, well, I'm just gonna put a bunch of aggro cards together or a bunch of control cards together, and there you go, I have my deck. I think it's much better if you just build your deck around a particular card that you think it's nice. And a good example here is this Novice Knight here, which is a 1 mana card that has Defender and is a 2/3. If it's equipped or enchanted, it can attack as though it didn't have Defender. That's a pretty simple design, and yet a pretty fun card. Sorry if you can hear some sound in the background. These are my cats running around. I can't do nothing to stop them. As I was saying, I think this is very fun deck to build, and you can try to do that. As I was saying, I think this is a pretty cool deck to build around Novice Knight. It would probably be a type of equipment deck or enchantment deck, but I think usually it's more rewarding if you try to build your deck around rare cards. And the reason for that is because rare cards are usually more powerful, and you can have more cool effects when you build around the rares that you have. Now, one important thing about building when you have a limited collection is that you don't want to build around a card that you have just one copy of. For instance, Mentor of the Meek is a decent card. I don't think it's particularly overpowered nor anything. You could try to build a deck around it, but I only have one copy, so it would be very frustrating to try and build a deck around a card that I only have one copy of. Let's try to search for a rare card that I have multiple copies of. So that's the first rule. For instance, I have 4 copies of Leonin War Leader, which is basically a card that inspires some type of soldier build or aggro build. Actually, the cats are not soldiers, so no soldier build. Let's keep looking and see if we can find a card that we have multiple copies of, and that would be fun to build around. Unfortunately, when you're starting, most of your collection doesn't have multiple copies. So here I have 4 Death Barons. That's definitely something we should consider now. We should consider building a tribal zombie deck. Yesterday I made a recording when I built a deck with Pestilent Spirit, but the recording was very problematic. It had a lot of pop sounds and crackling, so I'm not building a deck around the Pestilent Spirit again. I'm gonna try to do something different today. This card is also nice. Whenever an untoken creature you control dies, it creates a 2/2 zombie. Unfortunately, we just have 2 copies of it, so it doesn't look as worth it. Let's keep taking a look. Here we have 3 copies of Goblin Lord, which makes us want to play goblins. The issue here is that it would probably be an aggro deck, and this Lord costs 4, which is a lot for a Lord. And the second ability is kind of dead in this format right now. There aren't many artifact decks. If you like goblins, you can still play it, but I want to make a deck that's gonna be fun and somewhat powerful as well. Let me see if I can find something cool. So I have many copies of Vivian Reed, but I'm not gonna make a deck themed around Vivian Reed, which is just basically value. You put value creatures and you go to town. As you can see, most of my cards I just have 1 copy of. Now this is an interesting one. Revival Revenge. Return target creature card with converted mana cost 3 or less, or double your life total. Target opponent loses half their life, rounded up. That is actually quite a cool card. Let's keep it in mind. I'm not sure if I'm gonna build around it yet, but I have 3 copies, so I could easily build around that card. I also have 2 copies of Comena, Tyrant of Oraska, which would put us in Merfolk, but I don't think I have plenty of Merfolk to build this card. We have plenty of Mythic Dragons, but just 1 copy of each, so kind of doesn't work as well. Alright, so as you can see, when you are starting and you have a limited collection, your choices are a bit limited, but don't fret, don't get desperate. Let's see what this card is. This card is actually quite cool. It's a recurrent form of removal. Let's try and build then this deck. Return target creature with converted mana cost 3 or less from a graveyard to the battlefield. And you have to keep in mind that most of the time you're going to be using probably the revival mode, not the revenge mode, since the revival mode is much cheaper. But the revenge mode is a cool reach effect that you could use in a pinch. So now that we decided that we are playing black and white, our first consideration should be: are we gonna play any other color? We have some interesting cards in other colors, as you can see here. But I think the answer is no. And the reason for that is when you're starting, the mana base is really gonna hurt you because you don't have many lands. So you should try to stay away from 3-color decks, and just keep to 2-color decks at most. Monocolor decks are also excellent. Now that we've decided that we are orzo of them, let's use our filters again. Let's remove the filter from rare and mythic rare, and let's add the filter for black and white. Now I know all the cards that we can play, and since this card calls for a value strategy, we're gonna try to go for that. Since this is a value deck, we don't want to put a bunch of aggro cards. They're just gonna die and we bring them back. This basically would just work then as a 5th and 7th copy of Leonine Vanguard, which in some instances could be helpful, but I think in most instances wouldn't be. Let's see if we have the support then to build a somewhat powerful value deck here. It's kind of complicated to build a value deck in Orzhov, because you have to think what sort of value are you looking for. For instance, this card here is value, in a sense, Martyr of Dusk. When it dies, it leaves a token behind, so it's a 2-for-1 creature. Let's add it to our deck. We shouldn't expect in black and white to have multiple cards that draw us cards of things of that nature. And this card actually is quite cool, but we're not sure if our deck is going to be able to support it. And we don't have multiple copies of it, so perhaps we should stay away from it right now. Let's keep looking. This card is also very powerful, but we can't use it because it would cost us a lot of white mana. So this, in a sense, is a very powerful card. Not necessarily if you're playing against mid-range or control, but against an aggro deck, this card can be a very strong beating. So we're gonna put 2 of them as well. We can also bring them back with Revival, which is great. Let's try to keep in mind Revival is converted mana cost 3 or less, so we're gonna try to maximize that effect as much as possible. Here, History of Benalia. Though it doesn't interact with the deck that the card that we're building around, is just a powerful card overall, so we probably should play it. But let's consider not playing it if it comes to that. Minister of Obligation, another very powerful card. My concern with the deck now is the mana curve. We're getting a lot of 3 casting cost cards, which may be bad for us. This card is also 3 casting costs, and but it's also interesting. It's value, and we're looking for value creatures. When it comes into play, you can search for a creature with power 2 or less in the top 4 cards of your library. Ajani, very powerful as well. Don't worry about adding too many cards. We're basically just speculating on our deck here. Probably some of those cards are not going to end up in the final product, but it's fine. So an issue I have with white in the current format is that it doesn't have good removal. Most of its removal is conditional. I think the best removal card in white right now for the ladder, BO1 best of 1 matches, is actually Baffling End. It removes a lot of creatures and it costs just 2 mana. This card is a kind of an Oblivion Ring effect, but it costs 4, which is a lot. It's very hard to commit to 4 mana. So let's keep on looking for interesting cards. Settle the Wreckage is always a beating. Even if you just have 1 off. This card is very strong in a racing situation. You just get all of the cards from your opponent. This card is fun, but it's a bit too slow. 5 mana is a lot. Now we have a lot of cards that put tokens into play. We could consider putting this Divine Visitation. My issue here is that we have only 1 of them and it costs 5 mana. Perhaps that's too much. So let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's keep on looking. Keep on checking if we have cool white cards to add. Some of these cards I don't even know what they do, so I'm stopping to read them as we go. Now we got all of our value cards from white. Now let's see if we can have some value cards from black too. Remember, 2 power creatures and creatures that cost 3 or less are the best options. In that line, let's add Kitesail Freebooters. We only have 2, but it's okay. Orzhov Enforcer, also a very powerful card. Unfortunately, we just have 1 copy of, but it's okay. Let's keep adding, even if you just have 1 copy of. I love Wanted Scoundrels, and it works very well with Revival. I think this card could be a consideration, but let's not think that it will end up in the final product. As I said, we're basically just speculating here. Now, Midnight Reaper, powerful card to have, especially with life gain and ways to recover the damage that you're dealing to yourself. Fortunately, we have 3 copies of the Midnight Reaper there. Sorry, let me turn off my cell phone. Now, let's keep on looking. As I said, this is the basic process of deck building, and I'm doing as we go, which is always funny. It's kind of complicated to build a powerful deck from the first try. Sometimes the deck's not gonna work as you intended. Ravenous Chupacabra, also very powerful card. Probably should consider it there too. And now our deck is looking a little bit more mid-rangey than it's looking aggro. We should keep that in mind. Perhaps that's gonna be the end result of all our efforts. And we're having some trouble finding value creatures, which is normal. As I said, black and white usually don't have the most value creatures, and I'm limited to the options in my collections. So if I was really committed to the token strategy, I could consider cards that put Saprolings into play, like this Death Bloom Talent here, but it costs 3. I'm not sure it's worth it. Let's add it anyway. And now, since we have a bunch of things that do stuff when we lose creatures, let's add a Vicious Offering too. Vicious Offering is a very powerful. Ooh, we just have 6 minutes to finish this. That's gonna be tricky. Vicious Offering is a very powerful card. So is Costly Plunder. As you can see, our deck has already exceeded the number of cards that are allowed. It's fine. Let's keep on looking. Plenty of interesting cards actually here. We were thinking that we should keep our mana curve low, but to be fair, if you want to use the revenge mode, we should consider that we are going to have to get to 6 mana. So perhaps our initial concern of playing just with low casting cost cards should be abandoned as an illusion. Now unfortunately I don't know how to fix the filter, so I'm just showing Orzhov cards. I kind of have to see these cards here. This card is not very powerful. This card on the other hand could be very powerful. Let's add 2 of those. Imperious Oligarch is also quite cool as a magic card. We just have 1 copy of it. Let's add it anyway. This card is absolutely insane in this format. It's lifelink, tokens, everything you might ever want in your life. The issue is that it doesn't interact very well with anything that we're doing. We don't have any way to pump the tokens, and we don't have any way to record the sorcery, nor anything of the sort. So perhaps we should not try to go for it. Profane Procession is a very interesting card. A little bit too mana intensive for my taste though. Alright. So I think we have an initial idea of what our deck's trying to do. Perhaps it's playing too many one-offs that we can rely too much. Let's remove the one-offs. I like the value package that we have going here, especially the Ministrant of Obligation. The concern that I have with my deck right now is the fact that most of these cards cost 3 mana. Perhaps Wanted Scoundrels isn't the type of card for this deck, unfortunately. It was very fun in the Pestilence deck that I built. History of Penalia, also a very powerful magic card, probably would make my deck much stronger. However, it's kinda standing here without any synergy with our deck, so I'm gonna remove it. We want to make a deck more based on synergy than on anything else, and I think that's a good approach. I'm gonna stick to 24 lands because we have lots of value here, and we want to get to 6 mana. Perhaps that's something we're going to regret eventually, but let's keep it like that and reevaluate as we go. Now we need to check the land balance. And we're gonna play every single tap land that we can, just because 2-color decks are very intensive. Fortunately, we have 2 Godless Shrine and 1 Isolated Chapel, so we have some good cards there. Forsaken Sanctuary, 4. Let's see if we have some Orzhov Guild Gates. We have 3 Orzhov Guild Gates, and I think that's it. So it's okay. We don't have all the tap lands that we need. And if you don't have many tap lands, you should consider removing a color from your deck, because it feels very bad when you are playing this kind of deck here and you don't have the ability to play your spells. Let's call our deck, what's the name of this card again? Revenge. Let's call our deck Revenge. Yesterday I built Pestilence, but I had some audio problems. Now I'm gonna stop the recording, check the audio, see if it's good enough. Hey, so the audio seems to be working fine. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna take a Revenge deck centered around that split card that we had 3 copies of, and we're gonna see if we can make it work. We probably aren't going to be able to show too many matches since the server is going to get into maintenance format soon. But let's try and see if we can get some fun games here. You always try to test your deck in the play instead of ranked, because your deck's still in the experimental phase in the beginning, and you don't want to run against well-tuned decks. That is a recipe for frustration. What to see? Metiak. Are we playing against a What to See employer? Perhaps we are. This hand is quite cool. It needs a land, but we have 3 draw steps to find it, so I think I'm gonna risk and keep it. Let's see if we can outvalue our opponent here with all of our things going on. Opponent seems to be on mono white, which would be a good news for us. I think our deck has a good matchup against mono white. Perhaps I'm wrong. So I was going to play the Martyr of Dusk, but since I want to see what's up with my opponent's deck there, I'm gonna play the Kitesail Freebooter first now. I want to see what I'm facing exactly. Perhaps my opponent's mana is screwed. And also, if he's playing a creature deck, Kitesail Freebooter is not gonna have many targets anyway. Wow! Opponent's playing actually a control deck, and it's kinda mana screwed here. So he has a bunch of high costing cards that if he ever gets to it, we're screwed. And I think we'll have to take the seal away and hope my opponent doesn't develop his mana so we can win. It's not that we can't beat Drowned Secrets card deck here, we can. But it's gonna take us a while for us to be able to do that. Now, I think I'm gonna play the Deathbloom Talid just because if it dies, leaves a token behind. Opponent does have ways to deal with the Talid that don't involve attacking it. I think opponent kept a very risky hand. Perhaps it's gonna pay off for him. So it seems that so far, frustratingly enough, opponent stopped decking exactly what he needed. The only thing that he's truly missing is blue mana. Opponent says, I don't care about your Deathbloom Talid here. I'm gonna try to draw another card to play my Cleansing Nova. It would be a very good opportunity for us to play our Jenny. Unfortunately, we didn't find it. So we're gonna attack first. Our Inspiring Cleric not looking very inspiring right now. The Deathbloom Talid does leave tokens behind, so that is a consideration. And if we don't play it and my opponent decides to Exile and Binds him, our card gets stuck in our hand. So let's play another Deathbloom Talid. Hope our opponent thinks this board is good enough to wipe if he draws a land. If he doesn't draw a land, I think he's gonna have to start playing Aeromancer's Cagers. Yeah. He thinks it's more valuable to recover his card and then taking the damage. Not sure I agree there. Midnight Reaper was not a bad draw at all. Now we can draw cards if opponent ever blows our board. So if opponent goes Land Cleansing Nova, we draw 3 cards. Perhaps we can get out of our land screw here. Opponent still didn't find blue mana, so he's stuck there with 3 cards. We're gonna draw 3. And take 2. And we have still our Saprolings here. Hopefully can find a land. We play 24. Unfortunately no land. Let's see if we can draw land now. Ooh, it's a tapped land, unfortunately. I say unfortunately because this was the perfect turn to play the Ajani. Pump our Saprolings. But it's alright, folks. Don't desperate. We have a choice now of Minister of Obligation or Midnight Reaper or Militia Bugler. Militia Bugler actually finds us a card, and we already have plenty of cards in our hand. So I think I'm gonna go with the Minister of Obligation. It's less damage, but in the face of a removal spell, it would leave tokens behind. Opponent still lands screw there. Didn't find the blue mana that he was looking for. Now he's sealing away one of our Saproling tokens, which we definitely don't mind at all. He still has all of this to remove things. This also can remove our Ajani, so I have to keep that in mind. And now we're getting close to revenge mana, and I think our opponent isn't expecting a revenge effect here. It's gonna be funny. Let's attack first. Let's see if our opponent has any more tricks. We don't want to play the Ajani and pump because it wouldn't be lethal. Let's keep the Ajani as a surprise. Yeah, opponent has another seal away. And here we can I think we can try to kill this guy. Let's see if this works. I'm gonna play 5 life. And I'm gonna... Oh man, I forgot that... I should have... I made a misplay here. I was thinking that my opponent had already chose his target. But this is a... Yeah, I made a misplay. Sorry. I thought this card had already targeted, but it's an enchantment. It only targets when it enters the battlefield. It's alright. Opponent didn't take any damage. He's probably happy about that. Now we're gonna play our Militia Burglar or our Midnight Reaper. I think we want to play the Militia Burglar. So we are kinda outvaluing our opponent, but our opponent is mana screwed. That said, opponent kept a very risky hand there, and it paid off for him. This card dodges Sillaways, which is great. Opponent should be at 6 life now. Let's keep that in mind. Opponent gains 3 life, which is fine. And draws a card. He's still mana screwed, and he concedes. I think he sees the writing on the wall. So that game wasn't very informative, and I'm sorry for that, because we got mana screwed there at the beginning, so we couldn't run over our opponent, but our opponent also got color screwed, so it was just a bunch of awkward things happening for us there. I think, of course, my opponent was in much worse shape than I was. I was thinking that he was playing mono white. He was actually playing a control deck. Para, gatinho. Sorry, my cat here is bothering me. Opponent goes first, but our hand is very good. We have lots of our engines to go. Let's keep it. This card is also very powerful if my opponent's playing some sort of aggro deck. It appears that he is. He's on mono blue. Let's play the swamp. Let's hide the fact that we have this card here. No Curious Obsession, which is good. Opponent has a very good start already. Let's see if we can match him up. We're going to start with a Martyr of Dusk, actually. Now, this card, it goes around very well hexproof effects, but it doesn't go around well counter spells. Our deck in general can't face counter spells very nicely. Our only opportunity here is to try and force a racing situation where we are winning. So that's what we're gonna try to do. We're gonna throw our Midnight Reaper out there. Opponent probably can't counter it with just 1 mana. And now our opponent is in a bit of a bad shape, in the sense that he has almost infinite resources, but he has to convert his resources into blockers. If he has the gem here, it's excellent for him. The gem would be the best card that he could possibly have. Already doesn't have the gem, so now we are worried about Merfolk Trickster. And as I said, we can't stop our opponent value engine here, but we also have value of our own in the format of our creatures. Opponent plays a blocker, which we really don't mind at all. We're gonna keep pressuring our opponent instead of holding the Settle the Wreckage back. Let's attack first, see what our opponent does. He could go Hexproof effect here, so he doesn't lose his creature. He could play a Dive Down. Apparently, he's not gonna do that. Now, we have the choice to keep the Settle the Wreckage up. I don't like that yet. I think we're better off. Opponent probably has a counter spell here, so I think we're better off increasing our clock. Playing the Ministrant of Obligations. Perhaps we should have tried to hold off on the Isolated Chapel then and play the Guild Gate. Now, it's not like we are out of the woods. Opponent already is starting to develop his mana. Opponent correctly identifies that this is a race. Plays a Warkite Marauder. We don't mind that card actually. And we're not going to stop attacking. Opponent now starts to block. And we're gonna draw a card now. Let's see what we find. That was a very good draw. We could use it in our turn to surprise our opponent by sacrificing our Ministrant of Obligations and have a blocker for the Pteramander. Now here the issue is my opponent having Dive Down or a counterspell, a hard counterspell. The deck doesn't play many hard counterspells, so the issue here is Dive Down. Opponent has 7 cards in hand. Very unlikely that he doesn't have a Dive Down or a, and the issue here is that this also loses to Spell Pierce. So I kind of want to keep developing my board. We find another ministrant, which could be powerful. Let's just end our turn. Now we have final payment up and we have costly plunder up. It's funny that we can sacrifice an enchantment for this card. I think opponent's considering if he's going to play something at instant speed there. I wouldn't risk going shields down. Wow, that's so good for us. That's so good. Because now we can go final payment. We pay the additional cost of sacrifice a creature or enchantment. We sacrifice the creature that he was going to bounce. Whoops. We did this the wrong way. Sacrifice a creature or enchantment. Target the creature, we target this one. And we sacrifice this one. Now, there you go. So this was an absolute blowout to our opponent. He lost his draw engine. We got 2 creatures on the board. He lost his... Wow. That was so brutal to our opponent that he conceded. Was such a surprise for him there. And that's also the good thing of playing a deck that nobody knows what it's doing. He doesn't know what to play around there. It's very hard to think of that particular card as a card that we would be playing in our deck. We got a little bit lucky in the sense that the mono blue deck didn't find any of his lands in the beginning there, but the deck does play few lands and he did have the Curious Obsession early. So this hand's a little bit slow, but let's keep it. Let's see what kind of hand we should or should not keep. That's also very important when you're playing a deck such as this. Sorry for my cat getting in the way. She wants food. Wait a moment, cat. I'm gonna feed you. We're playing against Gates, which can easily go over the top. And we're giving the deck tons and tons of times. So if he plays a Guild Summit here, we are in pretty bad shape. Because then we have to outrace his best value engine card, which is that. And we don't play Mortify to destroy enchantments. Opponent's probably gonna laugh in the face of our Ministrant of Obligations here. If we were on the play, we would have a better chance of winning this game. As it is right now, things are now looking too hot. Okay, I didn't expect to see this card here. I guess now our agenda became much worse, because our opponent can play a sheep with haste and kill it.
No friend of mine fights alone.
Unfortunately here we don't have 2 creatures also.
I will lend you my strength.
We'll have to keep ticking up our Jenny. So here's the thing, folks. I'm not feeling safe at all. I think opponent has too many things going on. The only chance that we have to winning is playing this revenge card as soon as possible. Now I am going to play the Midnight Reaper because I kind of want to draw cards if my opponent tries to blow up our board. We could keep the costly plunder up. The issue is, if we sacrifice this card, we lose everything, all of our creatures. So that's not something we want to happen. And if we sacrifice this card, we draw the same amount of cards, we just don't take the damage. But since it's basically 0 cost, we're gonna do that. Opponent keeps recovering the life that we're taking away from him, which is annoying. But this card is gonna be a very nice surprise for our opponent there. So I think we let this happen. It's a bit bad that we lose all our creatures, but our Ministrant is gonna give us 2 tokens that are gonna grow with the Ajani. And we draw 2 cards. The Chupacabra was an excellent draw because of this card, this type of effect here. Now we have a serious choice to make, which is try and protect our Ajani or not. Ah, we can't protect the Ajani. We can't protect. It's unfortunate. This Rhythm of the Wild card is paying off for my opponent there. We can't block. So our deck is struggling. If we were on the play, of course we would be in a much better position. We still have the Revenge as a surprise trick here, though it's questionable when we should use it. The earlier we use, the greatest damage it causes, and we will also double our life total. So this card is brutal in a racing situation. The thing is, our pressure here is very, very small. And if we kill the Colossus, opponent can put back on top very easily, very fast. There aren't many good answers. I think if we're not playing this, we have to play the Chupacabra. And if we play the Chupacabra, we can play another creature as well, which is a bit bad. But let's try to play the Revenge now, I think. Even though it's our ace in the hole. Nah, you know what? I changed my mind. I'm gonna play the Chupacabra and keep the costly plunder up. Let's make our opponent think that we don't have ways to deal much points of that many damage. Wow, it's hard to say that. Let's make our opponent think that his life total is safe. Let me put it like that. It's better. Opponent can recover his Colossus now. Oh no, that's not. Ah, yeah, it's a good gate. He can recover his Colossus, and it's funny because he can stack the triggers in a way so he draw his Colossus back. Let's see if he was gonna play the Colossus. He decides that he will. Again, we don't mind this development. We might mind this one. Now we're in a bit of bad shape here. We could raise this Colossus how we played our Minister of Obligation. Wow, I think we're dead, folks. We can block these 2 cards and we can't. Yep, we're dead. That was quite brutal. This Rhythm of the Wild card changed completely the nature of the game. But the true MVP was the Guild Summit. This gate decks, they don't work well at all without the Guild Summit there. And they of course they would play 4 of them, so they have a very high chance of finding it. But on turn 3 in particular, it's very brutal. It's a lot of advantage. Perhaps we should have played the Revenge there, but I think that with all the power that our opponent had, we were not winning that game. And honestly, if you remember, we also kept a very slow hand on the play, which would have been great against an aggro deck regardless, I think. Again, I like this hand. We have a lot of recursion. Perhaps we're finally gonna use the revival mode here on the card. Opponent Temple Garden shocks himself and plays Incubation. Very strange. I'm not sure exactly what's going on there. Leonine War Leader. So it seems like a life gain deck. Not exactly sure. Let's play our second tap land. We don't mind, all our cards cost more. The fact that we have double Revenge too is funny. if we want to access that. Opponent's being very careless with his life total. Perhaps he thinks we are a control deck. We're not. Merfolk Branchwalker is fine. Reveals the plains. Now we could play this freebooter. Honestly, I'm not that scared of tricks that my opponent might have right now. So I want to make the more mana efficient play, which play the Ministrant of Obligation. If opponent attacks, we block. Perhaps we revive our creature. Druid of the Cow, that's fine. Wow, we're starting to flood in revival effects here. The issue now is that we don't have a sack outlet. Would be great to exploit these revivals. And I think that's the opportunity we will... I think first we attack, and then we take the opportunity to play our Kite Sail freebooter. Because if our opponent has 5 mana next turn and he has like a Planeswalker, we want to deny him this chance. Nothing that we can remove. Amazing. Opponent's basically a bent value deck. So I think again our best chance of winning is casting multiple Revenges. Opponent plays his Birthing Pod type of effect there. We got unbelievably lucky. There is an argument for attacking first with the Ministrant, and I think I'm gonna do that. Let's see if the opponent wants to make us have flying creatures. He does. I'm very glad that he let that happen there. The ground is gonna get clogged very fast. Now we kill his Birthing Port card. Now we have power on the air. We got very lucky with the sequence of draws here. I'm not gonna lie to you. Still, we would like to find lands eventually, so we can start playing our Revenge. We're not concerned about this type of card here. The only card that concerns us, honestly, is the more life gain. This is life gain, for instance. Sure. Opponent is a value deck. The Tocatli card would definitely be a beating for him. We could play a Revivals, but honestly, now I think I'm kind of priced into the Revenge mode. So I'm gonna play my Midnight Reaper. And I'm gonna attack with everyone, including the Chupacabra, because if our opponent wants to block here to save his life total, we draw a card, and we could draw the land that we're missing to play our Revenge. There it is. There it is. Now this hounds down or hounds up? It's rounds up, which is unfortunate. What that means is that my opponent's going to not die yet if we play this first. Opponent decides this is a race. I don't necessarily disagree with him, but I kind of want to make him block with the Jadelight Ranger. Well, I guess it's fine trading with the Militia Bugler. Again, opponent gave us the flying creature there, which I think was a mistake. Now this game is gonna get very funny, because this card, it's unraceable. You can't race this type of effect. I double my life total, you lose half of yours. That is brutal. And this time I'm gonna use the effect first. How about that, opponent? I go to 32, you go to very little. Unfortunately, this card can't kill. Opponent's probably looking for a flying creature. That's not a flying creature. That creature is life gain, but our second revenge is gonna kill our opponent. As you can see there, it was definitely a mistake when our opponent blocked the minister there. How about another one, opponent? How about another one? How about I go to 46 and you take 3? And now you die. So, that game there, I'm not gonna lie, we got very lucky with the running Chupacabras that we didn't have when we found it. That said, I'm very happy with the way our deck is already configured. I think it's working quite well, though I'm always tempted to keep the revival in my hand to use for the revenge mode, perhaps because I am greedy. We didn't play against aggro, which would make the Inspiring Cleric look much better than it looked in the games that it showed up. I like the way that our deck's configured, and I think we didn't find any Vicious Offering, which is funny. So we actually have more sacrifice outlets than I thought, since we have the 4 Vicious Offerings, the 3 Costly Plunders, and the 2 Final Payments. I was complaining that we didn't have many sacrifice outlets, but we actually have quite a few. There are more cards that we could add here to our deck, like the Doomed Dissenter card. That is the black card that when it dies, it leaves a black zombie token behind. This one. The problem with this card is it just has 1 power, and I rather play more copies of Martyr of Dusk in that case. That was a very successful experiment in deck building, in my modest opinion. We already found a pretty good formula for something that's working. That doesn't happen all the time. Sometimes you play and you think there are some cards that you're playing are quite mediocre. But this time I think we almost hit the nail on the head there. Of course, this deck could be much improved if we had more copies of other cards, but I'm trying to show you that you don't need many copies of the same card to make things work for you. And now I'm going to disconnect, since the server is set to go down anyway. And I showed you 4 matches, I think. Right now I don't have any improvements to make with the cards that I have, but if you have any suggestions, if you think this deck could be improved in any manner, just leave in the comment section. And I see you next time. That's how you build a deck, and I think it was a pretty fun experiment to build this deck here with you. Goodbye. If you liked this video, consider subscribing to my channel or just check my other videos. I also stream on Twitch every single day from Monday to Friday from 5 PM to 9 PM Eastern Standard Time. See you around!